Alright, good morning there, Facebook people. Let's try this again. Had some video problems here in the courtyard last few days. Keep forgetting to turn off the Wi-Fi because it tries to jump on the library across the corner. It's like just right on the edge, I guess. Sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off, and when it switches, it drops the feed. So I turned it off. Hopefully it'll last. Anyway, this is day 27, and this is blind justice on the streets of Aberdeen, Washington, sit out in front of City Hall. Day 27 of our peaceful protests, resting is not a crime, because 28 days ago the city council and the mayor passed a local ordinance making it illegal for people to sit or lie down on public sidewalks in the downtown area between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. So this is, clear violation of your rights, tramples on the Constitution, and we've said no, you can't do that. The local government doesn't have that kind of power, and we're not going to stand for it because we're sitting down. So we have petitions that we have going around, and what's cool about Aberdeen, one of the cool things here, is we're one of 8 cities in the state of Washington that has this referendum power where the people essentially have a veto. It's a people's veto, where we get enough signatures on a petition, we can overturn any ordinance that the city council passes. We have to get the signatures from Aberdeen residents who are registered to vote and get them all in 45 days from the time it was passed. It was passed on June 7th. Actually, it was printed on June 7th. So that's the way, and when it goes into effect here, that's the way the ordinance is worded, or the policy here in Aberdeen is ordinances go into effect after 3 things: after the city council votes it and passes it, after the mayor signs it, and then after it gets published in the paper. And so the publication date was June 7th, so we have 45 days from that date to get our 604 signatures, which is the 25% that we need, 25% of the people who voted in the last election here. So 604 is the target goal. What we have currently just from blind justice is 79, so that's about 13%. There's a few other petitions and clipboards going around. I know they've collected probably, that I've heard, the last number I heard was around 20 on one clipboard, and then there's a few others. So we're probably over 100 right now, and that's gonna also influence what we're doing through our day-to-day. So I'm only going to be sitting out here in front of City Hall for a couple hours. Probably around 11 I'll pack up and hit the streets again to go petition and get signatures. But just to give you a kind of synopsis of yesterday's petitioning, canvassing neighborhoods and businesses, it was a mixed response from people. We had some businesses, some employees and business owners sign the petition, which is really cool, like just here on the edge of downtown. And then we had obviously a lot of people sign it, because we're up to 79 just on the few clipboards we had going around yesterday with us. And the conversations are where I wanted to touch on some of the conversations we had, because it was interesting. A lot of people were in support of the petition and were like, this is crazy that the local government has gone too far, like they don't have this kind of power, I don't know what they're thinking, this isn't going to help anybody, this isn't the solution. That's some of the comments that people were saying. And then you had some comments for people that refused to sign, and some of those were pretty eye-opening. One lady said, "I'm for segregation." That one was a pretty, I didn't even know how to respond to that. I was just like, okay. And then as another person said, I think it's another lady, she said, well, I think the cops need to enforce unconstitutional laws if it basically if it does what I want. And I was like, well, what do you want? And she said, to get all the homeless people out of town. And so that sentiment was echoed by a few other people, where a lot of people that refused to sign thought these ordinances were specifically targeting the homeless population, and I clarified, well, according to the wording, it doesn't. specifically target the homeless population. You know, the intent that we've got, I try to explain the intent that we've heard from the council people is to increase business for the local business district, to make laws easier to enforce from the police, right, to address people's fears. But then the wording of the ordinance, because we're talking about the sit-lie ordinance specifically, applies to everybody. It doesn't just apply to people that don't have a house or are extremely impoverished. So people were struggling to understand that concept. You know, we have the full ordinance printed on every page, and it's on the back of the clipboard so everybody can refer to it. And some people asked to, read it. One business asked if I could leave a copy so they can read it, and while I went around and came back a few hours later. And some people stopped to read it like in its entirety, and they're like, yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying, and this applies, to me and my kids and to grandparents and people exercising that want to rest on the sidewalk. But, and then there's a but. It's like, but I think it's gonna get rid of undesirables. I'm like, so there's a few people that said similar things, and I asked them, like, so you're okay with giving up your rights and your kids' rights and the grandparents' rights as long as it gets rid of a certain population, as long as a certain population is run out of town? And they said, yeah, like their rights aren't more important than our rights. And so it's this, like, people think this is equality because it's equally trampling everyone's rights. And it's like, no, it's not equality, and it doesn't equally trample everyone's rights because there's exemptions in the ordinance. One of them being sidewalk cafes, right? So if you have enough money to go visit a sidewalk cafe and buy a drink at the prices at the sidewalk cafe, then you could sit down on the sidewalk and have your drink. If you don't have that kind of money, then you can't, right? Then, so that's a clear inequality, clear demarcation of segregation with these ordinances. So that was just a few different conversations I had with people. One person also that was really eye-opening was basically calling for internment camps, because I asked, well, what, when you want the homeless population or the extremely impoverished population run out of town, where do you want them to go? Because they're to another town and do the same thing in another town? And they said, no, we can gather them up in a place where they're guarded and basically where they can't leave, where they're watched. And another person said recommended a similar thing, where she said that they should be all locked up in a mental institution, like a mental prison, a psychiatric hospital, right? And there's actually a history of that. There's history of people and groups and governments doing similar things, taking undesirables and label them as such, or other dehumanizing labels, and locking them away, whether it be in psychiatric hospitals to get experimented on, or internment camps, or concentration camps, right? So the Nazis didn't start out with, issuing orders, Jews go to the cattle cars and go get shipped off to a concentration camp. That's not how the first laws came down. The first laws were very similar to these laws, these segregation laws that were passed here in Aberdeen. It's something similar to, okay, no, these are the population that we don't like, that we're going to try to move and force out and get the people to turn against. And then it turned into other kinds of forms of segregation. Okay, this population needs to wear an identification marker. Here's your star, right? And then you can't go here, you can only go here. And eventually, then it led to the cattle cars and led to people just obeying the orders, obeying the laws, and walking to their deaths, walking to be enslaved and imprisoned, and then dying, by the millions. So it doesn't start with cattle cars, but it ends with cattle cars and concentration camps if you follow down that road, right? So obedience isn't a virtue. And obedience to government and to, because the government says, oh, this is the law now, so you need to obey. Like, no, you need to wake up. You need to say, what is going on? Is this just? Is this equality? Is this freedom? Or is this a power play to segregate, to polarize, to help a specific population and not the entire population, right? And that's what these ordinances do. So that's why we're out petitioning to get them overturned. And if you want to come out and help, I encourage you to come out. I'll be out here in front of City Hall until about 11 today. If you want to come sign one of the boards I have, or if you want to come out and walk with me from then, I'll be setting out around 11 to go hit some more neighborhoods and get some more signatures. If you're interested in doing it on your own or with a group, message the page, comment here. We can get you some clipboards and some petitions so you can go out and canvass your neighborhood or your area and try to do this, right? We have the power of the people to overturn this ourselves and to say, no, we're not going to stand for injustice. We're not going to stand for discrimination and segregation laws. Like, we're past that as a species. We're past that as a people. Like, we're gonna stand up for justice for all, right? Liberty and justice for all. Freedom, that's what liberty is, and justice, equality for everybody. Not just for some, not just for the wealthy, right? Not just for the stakeholders, the business owners, right? Or the people in political power, okay? For everybody. Doesn't matter how much money you have, or if you have a place to, a house to sleep in at night. Freedom and justice, freedom and equality for everyone, liberty and justice for all. All right, everybody, peace and love to you, and Deo Presto Liber.